Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shmuel, with you with this week's Devar Torah, this week's 10-minute Torah. And a couple of things first. First of all, thank you for all those that tuned in on Zoom. And, of course, welcoming and inviting everybody else to come join us. It's so far so good. We're making the most of it with this environment of COVID-19. We've got to do what we got to do. Want to keep people safe. I know a lot of people have different opinions on that. And, of course, that's what makes us great as a people. We all have different things to bring to the table, so to speak. But we're doing this to keep people safe, and we're going to do our best to make sure that we still do meaningful and inspirational services. So we've got about 6 or 7 weeks till the start of the high holidays. And as some of you might have known, I've been calling people, then it kind of stopped a little bit because we've been doing a lot of planning for the high holidays, part of which is, first of all, we really don't know what we're going to do. We're planning, of course, for worst case scenario, whereas it's completely on Zoom. Will we be able to bring some people in to the synagogue to do a Torah service, to do any readings or whatever? We're just going to have to see where it plays out. And it may be right at that time that we make that decision. Who knows? We'll be having a few board meetings and we'll be making some decisions as a group. And, of course, we'll let you know. But just know that I'm anxious to talk to all of you, the new congregant, new for me at Temple Shalom, and of course, the people that I've been talking to as well from our regular group. So haven't forgot about you. It just been very, very busy. So this week's portion is Re'eh, and we're starting to work our way through Deuteronomy, coming again to the high holidays, which of course will culminate in Simchat Torah. But this is still Moses' second and third discourse now that he's talking and addressing the Israelites, the new generation that is going to go in and possess the land. And they're going to take it, of course, they're going to inhabit it, and they're being given the instructions to get rid of the Canaanites, get rid of the Canaanite tribes that are there now. Why? Because, of course, as we discussed last week, these people are very invested in paganry and idolatry. They don't have very, very good morals. And God is saying this is a very special land, and it needs to be inhabited by righteous people. And Moses is continuing to talk about that. He's talking about the differences. And he's saying, he's saying, first of all, Re'eh, see that you have blessings and curses. And we know we're going to come to the point where we have half the tribes on one part of the mountain, half the tribes on the other. That some are going to be blessings, some are going to be the curses, and just so they know, they understand, they've got their mission, their marching orders, so to speak. But there's a few things in this particular portion that, in a sense, seem kind of disjointed. One of which is the fact that, talks about false prophets. If someone comes and says, do this, do that, the other thing, unless you see signs and wonders, the likes of which you saw with Moses and God splitting the sea, the manna coming, the cloud during the day, the fire at night, then this person is a charlatan, a holim, dreamer of dreams. You don't listen to that. In fact, not only don't you listen, but you get rid of them. Also, you do not tolerate those among your ranks, those of your people, and it's very specific about this, if it's a brother, a sister, a wife, a parent, a child, a relative, whoever it is, you do not tolerate divergence in the commandments. And when I say divergence, I don't mean somebody has a different opinion. We're talking about people that are telling you that what you believe in is wrong and this is the right way to do it. In other words, you're getting led astray. Once you start on that road, it is a slippery slope. Compare it to this. Compare it to, teenagers. And I use teenagers because at that part of life, we're all very susceptible and very vulnerable to peer pressure. You get a couple of bad eggs in there, it's expression from my generation, bad apples, whatever, that want to go do, let's rip this off from a store. Doesn't that sound like fun? Let's get into trouble, And you start following it, and it leads from one thing to another. Next thing you know, you're in a gang or you're doing whatever, and you're going out and you're and you're robbing people or whatever. And that's what happens when you start getting involved with untoward, immoral, unethical people. And it's the same thing here. It's not that these people just have different beliefs, it's what those beliefs are. And the Eitz Chaim Chumash, the one I'm reading this year, is very specific to point out, there's some major religions out there, and besides Judaism, of course, that may approach things a different way, and that's fine because there's still an essence of morality in their system. But with these people, there isn't. There isn't. I mean, these are people, and it even mentions it in this particular portion, that sacrifice their children to appease what? To appease stars and the sun and the wind and the rain and the clouds and the tree gods and whatever else. And that's what makes Judaism so unique, especially in that time, and maybe even in this time too. The fact that there's one God. Everything comes from God. We aspire His good graces. Last portion, Ekev, Moses was very specific to point out the fact that, you may think that this prosperity is because of your merit, but I'm telling you, it's not. It's because of the promise God made to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it's because of the wickedness of the people that inhabit the land now. So be careful, that's the point. In addition, we get revisited the laws of Kashrut. And there's a list of animals that are not suitable for eating. And at the end, it says, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Now, when you look at the type of animals that we can eat, right, and this is just for animals, and the main diet back then was not necessarily meat. Of course, we ate meat. A lot of it, but though, was on for special occasions. It was when you came to the temple to do an offering. And by the way, this is another point about this that's brought up in concert with the idea of kashrut. With which animals we can eat and what we can't. Animals, birds, fish, which and just to take a sideline, we know the cloven hoof, the chewing the cud. We also know with the birds, it's as a rule of thumb, as a general rule, rather, we eat the domesticated birds, not birds of prey. So we don't eat eagles or hawks or even ostriches, bird of prey. The fish, fins and scales, no creeping creatures, no little insects except certain locusts. I know that some people that may not be palatable or attractive to a lot of people. It certainly isn't to me. And so it enumerates that. But it also says that, you can eat meat without having to involve it in a sacrifice. Now, the ancient Israelites, yes, they were carnivores, but not so much, mostly a vegetarian diet. And a lot of times the meat was reserved for a special occasion like Pesach or when you brought a sacrifice, or, just for special feasts, pretty much. I mean, they didn't really eat animals because they were very expensive. We didn't have the type of production we have now. Let me make a suggestion. People have looked, what is the reason we keep kosher? And, if you look in the Torah, it says, you are a holy people to me, and this will keep you kosher. Some people say, well, it's because you are what you eat. And if God's telling you these are the kosher animals, then that's what keeps you holy, because you're eating something that's holy. So, or the kashrut is holy, so you're becoming holy. Consider that another reason is to keep us apart. To keep us identified as Jews, but also to know that you're reminded of the commandments. Because keeping kosher is such you have to put an effort. It's an effort. It's a process that involves effort to eat kosher, right? So it reminds you you're a Jew, and what does that remind you of? Of course, the mitzvah, the commandments. Finally, it talks about the holidays, the various the pilgrimage festivals. And this is a very interesting point, but I like to think that in Judaism, I tell people this, that in Judaism, there's typically 2 or 3 reasons why we do things. Same with the holidays, the 3 pilgrimage holidays, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. On the one hand, they're religious holidays, Passover, the Exodus from Egypt, Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah, Sukkot is God's taking care of us in the wilderness, but they're also agricultural holidays. Passover is the spring planting, and we've got the 50 days when we're counting the Omar, where the harvest is starting to grow, the early spring harvest is starting to grow, and The harvest is, Bikarim. It's the first fruits on Shavuot. So that's the agricultural holiday. Sukkot, which is like our Thanksgiving, it's when we have the fall harvest. See? So you've got the agricultural component to the holidays, to the pilgrimage festivals, and you have the religious. And this, of course, is when people would go, they would travel to, and it doesn't say exactly where, but God says to a place where I will let you know once you get there. It'll be a place we'll designate it, and it's the only place you're going to sacrifice. Why? Because they don't want people interpreting the religions differently, and that's part of the issue. One place you have the Kohanim, the high priest. It's all done in a certain way according to Torah. No questions. All right, so thank you for tuning in. And as you've seen, we're doing some Devar Torahs now, which is just straight commentary. The sermons are coming on my weekly email. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, either call, phone, text, or email. And thank you for tuning in.